So I'm honored to be here with you for the 45th annual Langston Hughes Festival at the City College of New York. I'm Jervette R from the Black Studies, soon-to-be department here at the City College of New York, and I'm also honored to be the president of the College Language Association, the oldest and largest organization of Black professors of languages and literature in the United States. So thank you. And I'm also honored to join you on Langston Hughes's actual birthday, which is also really cool. Yeah. And the first day of Black History Month. So yeah, we got a lot to celebrate today. So thank you for joining us. So February 1st, not only Langston Hughes' birthday and the first day of Black History Month and all the other cool stuff that I just told you about, but we're also entering the period of celebrating the 55th anniversary of the takeover here at CCNY. And if you're not familiar with the takeover at CCNY, you need to get familiar with the takeover, which we honored earlier today at the symposium with a panel that included student activists from 1969 who established the paper, which you see around you. You also probably saw it out there in the lobby. And the paper is amazing, as you can see. It's incredibly cool. But the takeover, these students issued 5 demands to this institution. And those demands radically changed and shaped this place that we get to learn from, work at, and do all kinds of cool things at. And that takeover also was documented in a really amazing film called The 5 Demands, which we have the director here with us, Andrea, right back there. And we had the honor of screening that earlier today, and that film will be on PBS soon, and we hope that you'll take a look at that. But the paper was started by a group of multicultural students, and it's still in existence today here at CCNY. Students are running it, and we were able to learn from students who were a part of it when it first started, and students who are now a part of it today, and we hope that you will take a look at it. You can also check it out in our archives. Our librarians have done an amazing job of documenting that, and we were of course able to see that film. And most importantly, you can still support the paper. If you look on page 7 in your program, there's a QR code where you can donate to the student scholarship where you can support this good work, and we hope that you will do that. In addition, I know that most of you are here for one particular reason: to see the paper, right? No, you're here for 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, 1-time National Book Award winner, Colson Whitehead, and we thank you for joining us and celebrating him today. It's incredibly fitting that we have Colson Whitehead as our medal winner, as his writing has honored and celebrated Harlem and its people, and that's one of the things that we wanted to do today. We wanted to weave together a narrative, and that's the cool thing about the Langston Hughes Festival. Langston Hughes has been telling the story of Black people in poetry, in literature, in his short stories in so many different ways, and Colson Whitehead is continuing that in his work. And so as we talk about the reestablishment of Black Studies as a department here at CCNY, we wanted to start with that. We wanted to start with celebrating Black people here in Harlem. CCNY is in Harlem, and Harlem is Black people, and that's what we wanted to do today. And it is an honor and it is a privilege to be here with you, to be able to do that and to bestow this honor on him. And so I thank you for the opportunity to do that. We will start with having some welcome remarks with some people who helped make this day happen. So we cannot, of course, have festivals without administrators who give us money to make sure festivals happen, right? And we want to make sure that we keep having those festivals. So I want to welcome first our provost, Tony Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Jervette. I hope to give you more than just money.
I hope you do too.
But support and maybe occasionally inspiration. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to welcome all of you to City College. I'm excited because this is Langston Hughes' 123rd birthday. And I'm excited because I am a huge fan of our honoree, Colson Whitehead. Ever since I read his first novel, The Intuitionists, more than 20 years ago, I read it for a second time a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to see if it was really as great as I remembered it, and I'm here to tell you it is. If you haven't read his first novel, I encourage you to go back and read it. I thought that I had read all of his work. This is an incredibly prolific author. I thought that I had read all of his books, and there are various people around campus because I was bragging about having read all of his books. Turns out I haven't. I missed a few, so I'm happy about that because while I'm waiting for the third volume of the Harlem trilogy, I now have more Colson Whitehead to read. When you pick up a Colson Whitehead book, you don't know exactly what you're going to get. It could be a noir-like novel like The Intuitionist and like the Harlem trilogy. Could be a zombie novel like Zone 1. Could be a historical novel like The Nickel Boys, which is a really sort of devastating story, or The Underground Railroad. But you know what you're going to get is a great feat of imagination and wonderful writing. The one common theme that runs through all of these different genres is the Black experience in America. Sometimes it's an allegorical story like The Intuitionist, and sometimes it's a very direct story like The Underground Railroad or The Nickel Boys. But they're always deep, thoughtful, and thought-provoking. I thought, in the symposium today, and you see on the posters hanging, and actually in your program, I didn't realize this, I was going to read a bit from this Langston Hughes poem that's here, but I just thought that the very end of this poem, which is on the masthead, also is a kind of encapsulation of Colson Whitehead's writing, and so I'm going to paraphrase slightly. We look out on the world and wonder what we're going to do in the face of what we remember. And I think that really does encapsulate a theme that runs through this story. What are we going to do in the face of what we remember? So I'm really thrilled to welcome you here to the 45th Langston Hughes Festival. I'm thrilled that Colson Whitehead is going to join the likes of James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and Maya Angelou, among many other people listed in your program, in being the Langston Hughes 45th medalists. So welcome.
I'm also honored to welcome to the stage our Dean of the Humanities. And if you notice, in your program, you have the bios of everyone. And I am a firm believer of letting you read the bios of everyone and just letting people come up here and talk. So the Dean of the Humanities, Renata Miller, thank you.
Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Nickel Boys, stunningly thematizes the importance of empathy and imagination in telling the stories of those whom the world has tried to silence. It also reflects on how the process of entering into another's story is essential to the formation of community. In this sense, The Nickel Boys is about the transformational effects of literature and storytelling. A belief in those effects is at the root of the Langston Hughes Festival. Since 1978, the Division of Humanities and the Arts at City College has given the Langston Hughes Medal to the most distinguished writers who have given voice to the Black experience. The festival's events earlier today also celebrated the power of voice and story. In the midday symposium, we celebrated alumni who, as City College students, founded a student newspaper called The Paper, specifically because their experiences were not covered in other publications. Among the stories they told was that of the Attica prison uprising. We heard about how they scooped the New York Times, publishing a story about it before the Times did. And we learned about how The Paper continues to be a vital student publication today. That panel, as you've already heard, was followed by a viewing of The Five Demands, a film by City College professor Andrea Weiss and City College alumna Greta Schiller. And that film itself tells the story of an extraordinary moment in City College history when students demanded to be heard. And as a result, they helped to shape City College into the extraordinarily diverse community that we are today. Today's Langston Hughes Festival marks the kickoff for Black History Month at City College. But the work of the Division of Humanities and the Arts in studying the African diaspora and Africa itself is not the work of a month or a day. Rather, we are working every day to establish Black studies as a national leader in the study of Black people, right here in the center of Harlem. For the last few years, the college has been working to build Black studies from a program into a department, and I'm delighted to share some news about our progress. Our growing number of faculty conducts research on subjects that range from the Harlem Renaissance to jazz in West Africa, to 19th century Haiti, to the African diaspora in Brazil, to contemporary oral histories of African American women writers. We have partnered to provide students with internships in the Hispanic Society and the Schomburg Library. A grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities supported us in hiring 2 new faculty members, specifically for the purpose of building a Black Studies department. And we are enormously fortunate that your host for this evening and the chair of this festival, Professor Jervette R, joined us in summer 2023 as new leadership to create that department. Professor Ward comes to us from the faculty of Mississippi State University and, as you have heard, currently serves as president of the College Language Association. In addition to expressing my gratitude to Professor Ward for her leadership and vision, I have a couple of other thank yous this evening. The Simon Rifkin Center for the Humanities has become an essential part of the intellectual life of our campus, supporting a wide array of public programs, including this one, and I want to acknowledge the very generous and long-standing support of Barbara Rifkin. And of course, President Boudreau and Provost Liss for championing Black Studies at City College becoming a department, particularly through the pandemic and the post-pandemic era. And finally, thank you all for joining us this evening. This is a very exciting time for Black Studies at City College, and we are grateful for the support and enthusiasm of our community.
Thank you, Dean Miller. So since I'm new to Black Studies and to New York City, and I'm a Harlem Renaissance scholar from Memphis, I wanted to celebrate the Great Migration and the South, all things that helped in the creation of this special place, Harlem. Because, you know, you can't have Harlem without the South. You can't have this place without the movement of Black people coming up from places like Birmingham, like Tupelo, Mississippi, like Memphis, Tennessee. You need them to come up to Harlem, bringing that dirty South with them, a little bit of the blues and the jazz and all of those things coming together that make Harlem and combining with the beauty and the specialness of the North all together to make this space and this place special. So I wanted to bring a little bit of that to my first Langston Hughes Festival when they asked me to chair it. So I asked the Memphis ambassador of music if she would come up and join us and bring music today for us. And so we are honored to have Ariel Rain, the Memphis ambassador of music, joining us today. Thank you.
Harlem, how y'all doing? I said, Harlem, how y'all doing? It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Dr. Ward, for inviting me. Yes, I came from Memphis. I'm originally from Chicago. So to be in Harlem, New York, it is an honor and a pleasure to sing for you all today. I hope that everyone leaves feeling hopeful, inspired, and just better. You know, sometimes we just want to feel better. So I'm going to start off first with singing our Black National Anthem. I don't know if we're supposed to stand when we sing the Black National Anthem, but stand in your hearts, okay? All right, let's get it. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy path. Now that we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise against the listening skies. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you guys, thank you. For my next song, I'm going to be singing a rendition of George Michael's Faith. I was a Columbia College Chicago student, and we did Battle of the Bands, and we had to make our own interpretation of a cover. And so I would listen to it walking down the street every day. I'd be like, well, I guess it would be nice. Because that was my vibe, that was my beat. But I made it bluesy, and I made it about keeping the faith in the midst of following your dreams. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody you guys enjoyed the rendition of George Michael's Faith. Sad that he's gone, but he definitely vibed, for sure. The next song that I'm singing is my song. It's called So Close. I wrote it after I did American Idol, and it was about defying the odds and keeping with yourself in your process, not giving up on yourself when you think you didn't go as far, or maybe if I would have, in hindsight being 2020. And when you think about having a dream, you think about the process, how you have to be in a paradox, how you have to be tough yet soft, and you have to be loving, but you have to stand on your boundaries, you know? And so I wrote a song to myself, but I wrote it from the standpoint of any relationship, of not giving up when you fall. Because if you learned along the way, you never really failed. Standing so close, yet 1,000 miles apart. Holding hands, but you won't look me in my eyes. Tears fall on empty words and half-written texts. Do you even love me? Runs all through my head. And I cry to the sound of your empty beating heart. And I try so hard, but my love can only go so far. Are you always gonna leave me when things get hard? Always gonna leave me when things get hard. Do you even love me? It runs all through my head. Having conversations while I'm in bed. Having conversations with myself. You see, I'm trying my best to be my own help. And I cry to the sound of your empty beating heart. And I try so hard, but my love can only go so far. Are you always gonna leave me when things get hard? Always gonna leave me when things get hard. I'm saying please, don't leave me when it's easy. I'm saying please, don't leave me when it's hard. I'm saying please, whoa. Don't leave me when it's easy. I'm saying please, please. I cry to the sound of your empty beating heart. And I try so hard, but my love can only go so far. Are you always gonna leave me when things get hard? Always gonna leave me when things get hard. Thank you guys so much for having me. Hand over even this on team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Well, it's my good friend, Zandria Robinson, who's the keynote speaker for the CLA convention coming up in April, if you're looking for something to do in April, in Memphis, by the way. The South got something to say. She loves to say that one. But that also reminds me of Colson's quote back here. Black people always found a way in the most miserable circumstances. If we didn't, we'd have been exterminated by the white man long ago. I think about what music has brought to many of us in many of a circumstance. So thank you so much for that. Thank you. So I do not have the pleasure of introducing Colson for his reading. Mr. Dr. Kadon has the pleasure of introducing Colson Whitehead for his reading today. Dr. Kadon?
Good evening, Harlem. Good evening, Harlem. I'm being a bit pressing now because I feel so uplifted, y'all. I was just sitting there and I felt like, I haven't been to church in a while, but geez. Thank you. I don't want to belabor, but another round of applause for our incredible speakers. Okay. Colson Whitehead. I wasn't here for some of the speeches, but I'm sure we have amply heard of his incredible achievements. He's a recipient of a MacArthur. He is the author of 9 novels, including his incredible genre-transcending debut novel, The Intuitionist. He's the winner of a National Book Award for the 2016 The Underground Railroad, 2 Pulitzer Prizes, one for the Underground Railroad and the other for the Nickel Boys in 2020. He is, and a Google search will attest to this, a central determining force in and for the movement of contemporary American fiction. But I found that even with the forward-facing direction of some of these claims, one is still likely to find a barrage of analyses linking Colson to the giants of the past, E.B. White, Philip Roth, William Faulkner, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and of course Langston Hughes. And it's an understandable inclination when trying to make sense of such a singular talent, especially when we often feel so compelled to place it within a lineage of something we are determined to define as ours, as American, fundamentally. And I'll have more to say about America in a second. But I want to linger for a second on that idea of singularity. And I think it would be a fool's errand to pin down a novel or a quirk that is fundamentally Colsonian, Whiteheadian. To travel the breadth of Colson's works is to feel impish delight at discovering some secret of crafting language into the written word. Language that is gloriously wild and untethered and rhapsodic, and knowing that it can take on any tone or modality or genre if the writer is just daring enough to go for it. The scope of Colson's work has carried various tags such as postmodern noir, historical fiction, fantasy, steampunk, zombie apocalypse, dystopian. But if I may be so bold, I think there is a chord, or I found a chord, that threads through his works, whether it's through allegory or brutal realism. And it's this sense of a refuge that continues to elude us, and the sense of an America that continues to defy its founding mandates. I came to this idea when I read The Underground Railroad, which is one of the novels I actually hadn't read, I had skipped over it. I decided to read it over the weekend, and in that novel, our protagonist, Cora, gets to see the visceral entrails of America via a literalized railway. And there's something Dante-esque about her journey, state by state. And every time we enter into a new state, we enter an even more lurid version of hell. And as I'm actually talking, I'm realizing I contradicted my entire thesis about tying his works to past grades, and I'm doing it, and we can't help ourselves, we're academics, so bear with me. But I realized, unlike Dante and his parable, his story, there wasn't a formative sin, or one that Cora, the protagonist, committed, that greased her descent into hell. And there is a part in the novel, as she is moving through America, she thinks to herself, what did I do to deserve this? I mean, if retribution is payment for past evil deeds, what could I, and those who look at me, have possibly done to deserve this torment? I mean, we do get, I was about to say hints, but blatant responses here and there, the color of her skin, and a line which I found rather pithy, that the quirk about America is that people are fundamentally things, right? So we get the hints, but I think necessarily the question remains unanswered because logically that question still haunts us today. And because the spirit of question remains with us today, I found in his works that the stark reality of despair that is necessarily tempered by illogical optimism ferries us through the American histories of his works. To get an account of American history through Colson's work, and I mean, I'm using a lot of words here, but I think something I still haven't said is just what an incredible craftsperson Colson Whitehead is. Reading his works, you're treated to a language that is variously evocative and lush and bracing and confidently unassuming. And so to get an American history through a craftsman such as Colson is to encounter time and time again just how brutal lyricism can be. But his writing is also humorous. We get a lot of humor along the way. And I've said a lot about the scope of his works, and I want to emphasize again, there's no introduction that can capture the many dimensions and directions of his works. If you love New York, if you love the zombie apocalypse, if you like an interesting take into the ironies and mistakes of American academia, you should do yourself a favor and not just focus on one or two of his novels, but read through the entire oeuvre. It's something that I found incredibly informing about trying to understand just a piece of this vastly complex and interesting and continuing to struggle country that is the United States. And so with all of that said, please join me in welcoming our most honored guest, Colson Whitehead.
Thanks so much for that lovely introduction, and thanks so much for the musical interlude. It's really great to be here, and I'm so honored to be part of this festival. I usually spend Thursday nights at home in my apartment weeping over my regrets. So this is a nice change of pace for me. To receive this medal, that so many people who have inspired me have also received, named after Langston Hughes, a writer who's so visionary and forward-looking that he decided to be born on the first day of Black History Month. I'm going to read a little bit from Crook Manifesto, the second book in my crime trilogy. I got the idea to write a heist novel when I was driving with my wife, and I was thinking about what movie to rent that night. Ocean's 11 again, how many times can I rent that? I get ideas from all sorts of places. My first book, The Intuitionist, I got the idea from Dayline NBC, I was watching TV. This was in the late 90s. And Dateline had a piece on the hidden dangers of escalators. Apparently, over time, escalators can sort of detach from the side, the tread can detach, and if you have small feet, or you're a child, you might lose a toe. And they interviewed an escalator inspector, and I thought, that's a weird job. I guess somebody has to do these things. And then I thought, escalator inspector, elevator inspector. It's not necessarily followed through right now, but for many years, all the elevators in New York had to have an elevator inspection certificate. And the inspector signs his or her name. You go to school, you go to work, and they've come and they've signed, and it's the same handwriting year after year. You go to your friend's house, and he's been there, so I have like beats like cops. So I thought, what if an elevator inspector had to solve a criminal case? Being an inspector, I was trying to do a book with plot. I read a novel that no one liked, so I thought, well, how about I'll try a book with a plot? People seem to like that. So I went to the library to see what kind of skills an elevator inspector would bring to a criminal case, and the answer was none, because they're elevator inspectors. So it had become a book about an elevator mystery, where elevators are really important. So I got this idea for that book from watching TV. I got an idea from a dream once. Zone 1 came from a dream. I grew up in the 70s, and parental supervision sort of theoretical in the 70s. Like I watched a lot of things. I was really inappropriate. I remember, we got HBO as soon as it was invented, so we didn't have to talk to each other. And every Saturday night, I would watch a movie with my brother and my parents. And I saw A Clockwork Orange when I was 10 with my parents. And I remember, watching it. I was like, Mommy, what's happened to that woman? And she was like, shh, it's a comment on society. I'm watching a movie. And that was my introduction to Stanley Kubrick. And I saw Night of the Living Dead at a very early age. PBS showed it on Halloween. And if you don't remember, if you've never seen it, it's black and white, and it has a black protagonist. And there were not a lot of black protagonists in movies I saw when I was a kid, so it stuck with me. And in the movie, he's being chased by a white mob that wants to tear him limb from limb. I think even then, that seemed like a metaphor for America. I guess that's up there and stayed with me. I saw Dawn of the Dead, a few years later. I was 12. And I started having zombie dreams at age 12. A couple times a year for decades. Sometimes they were fast, sometimes they were slow. Sometimes I would escape, sometimes they talk. It would all depend on what was going on with me. But for years and years, I had zombie dreams. And that went on until 2009. I was going through some changes. My father just passed, and I was dealing with that. I was about to get divorced. There were some hints I was about to get divorced, such as getting a divorce lawyer. But before that went through, summer came, and we always rented my aunt's house in Sag Harbor. We'd have guests. It's a house my grandfather built in the 40s, and the walls are very thin. It's a no-sex house. I try to make that clear to people. Come out for July 4th. We'll have a barbecue. There'll be fireworks. No sex, please. Because you can hear everything. So I woke up Saturday morning. I was going through this life changes. I didn't know if I should have had this, family friend weekend. I woke up, I heard my friends laughing downstairs, and so I just went back to bed. I willed myself back to sleep. And I had a dream that I wanted to go into my living room, but I wasn't sure if they swept the zombies out yet. And so I woke up, and I was like, oh, that's actually a real consideration after the apocalypse. How do you get rid of all the extra zombies? You're putting society back together. So I actually got an idea from a dream. I'm sure a lot of writers in the audience know that if you wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, that's really a brainstorm, write it down in the dark, and you look at the piece of paper in the morning, and it's like, kill my dad, make love to my mother, It's not a novel. short story. It's been done before also, antiquity, whatever. But I was lucky I got a book idea from a dream. And in the case of the Harlem trilogy, as I'm calling it, Harlem Shuffle and then Crook Manifesto, I had to figure out what to rent, and I was jealous of Steven Soderbergh. He must have so much fun coming up with these heists. And I started thinking about my love for heist movies. You know, they can go either way. You can either pull it off and transcend, you know, your sort of grubby origins. If you plan everything down to the last minute, last details, and pull it off, you get the heist, your big payday. You can escape who you are, who you've always been, your destiny. And then there's the other kind of heist story, where you plot and plan, you're gonna get your big payday, and what you don't know, but what the audience knows, is that the wheelman is on heroin again, the safecracker, his wife is cheating on him, he's all sad, he's gonna screw it up. And no matter what you do, you can't escape who you are. And so I love that sort of existential dilemma of the heist. And had so much fun coming up with the main character, Ray Carney, that became 3 stories in one, Harlem Shuffle, and then another book, and another book. So I'm going to read a bit from a short section from Crook Manifesto, which came out last year. The canvas gets bigger as the trilogy goes on. And in this section, Pepper, who's like a sort of sociopathic criminal sidekick of Ray Carney, is becoming sort of a private eye. He has to find a missing person. And he's accompanied by a Richard Pryor type character named Quincy Black. And they're going into a brownstone. Roscoe Pope is the comedian, is Richard Pryor. And Quincy Black is a drug dealer they're trying to get information from. So they go to Quincy Black's townhouse, and Pepper gets allowed in because Roscoe is vouching for him. Quincy Black opened the door, decked out in brown corduroy trousers and a white silk shirt embroidered with tiger heads. He was younger than Pepper had imagined, lean and long-limbed, with the well-trimmed eyebrows and goatee of a B-movie villain. He gushed, "Roscoe, you look great, congratulations." Roscoe Pope smiled. "For what?" "For all of it, brother, all of it." Pepper and Pope stepped into the vestibule. Quincy gave Pepper a once-over. "I'm Pepper." "Good to meet you, brother." Quincy pointed to the low bamboo rack by the foot of the stairwell. "They go there." Pope was acquainted with the house rules and bent down to take off his sneakers. He signaled for Pepper to join him. Yet Pepper did not remove his shoes. He was thinking about the patches of light on the polished banisters, the freshly vacuumed hallway runner. Staff. How many people did Quincy employ to keep up the place, and where were they now? Quincy looked at Pepper's black robes and said, "Thanks, brother," as if Pepper had heeded his request, which he had not. Quincy added, "In Oriental cultures, it's part of the arrangement between host and guest." Yet Pepper did not remove his shoes. A large man emerged from the back of the townhouse, tiny-headed and round-bellied like a 10-pin, lumbering from the kitchen. He wiped his left hand on his yellow apron and peered down the hall at them, taking the measure of the situation. His other hand held a butcher knife. Cartoon salt and pepper shakers cavorted across the body of the apron. Yet Pepper did not remove his shoes. It was not Pepper's intent to be difficult. It was a matter of personal principle. Socks were holy. To straights and squares, the criminal world was defined by chaotic forces, the violent and the unruly, the reprehensible and the forbidden. But Pepper governed his own little corner through iron rules and logic, and if asked to explain his system, don't work with dopeheads, never knock over a bank on a Tuesday, he could do so, though no one ever asked. His disproportionate affection for socks, however, was idiosyncratic and belonged to the realm of the unsayable, like the formula of love or the final name of God. His appreciation took root in the freezing Newark mornings of his childhood. Cotton swallowed around his feet, no matter how threadbare, allowed him to face the mirthless cold. In the Pacific Theater during the war, he came to respect and revere fresh dry pears as a ward against trenchfoot, parasites, and myriad fungal depredations. The first thing he did when he got to the Green Valley Motor Lodge after the botched McCarran job was to peel off his blood-soaked footwear. He didn't feel human again until he put on a new pair of cotton poly socks. People were often disappointing. A fine pair of socks, seldom so. They were not to be displayed casually at a stranger's demand. He slept in them, only took them off to bathe or make love, although on 2 occasions they had been cut off by emergency personnel while he lay unconscious. At this moment, he was not making love, and the highlight of his day so far had been a long, hot shower. No, he could not stoop or bend in the hallway, the front hallway of Quincy Black's townhouse. It was impossible.
Thanks for that. I'm Emily Roberto. I'm a faculty member here in the English department, and I'm delighted to talk to you. I hope that I can stop.
Oh, hopefully, yeah.
I wanted to start by talking to you about lineage, something that my colleague, Don, mentioned. Because often when we think of Langston Hughes, we think of him not as an individual writer, but as part of the collective of the Harlem Renaissance, and the other writers of that cultural movement, including Noah Larson and County Cullen and Zora Neale Hurston and Jean Toomer and others. And when you were in college, you were a member of the Darkroom Collective.
I wasn't. Kevin Young was, my friend. But I was not really much of a joiner. I was like, I'm a loner. And so when they started getting together, I went to a few events, but I was actually not part of the Darkroom Collective. But I was very envious of that kind of association. Mm-hmm. I mean, the people you just mentioned in the Renaissance, who were their models? You know, growing up, like, I want to be a black poet. Who do who could you look for as an example of who you want to be? And then they find each other in the city, and they like each other, and they're in Harlem. They're competing for resources, trying to get their names. They're collaborating. They're turning on each other. But to have that moment where all these people come together is such a special moment. So I did find writers, fellow writers who were my age, but I was not Darkroom.
Did they invite you and you just were like, nah?
I was just, kind of a weird loner,
Yeah.
I'm a loner dotty, as like P.B. Herman said. And so, yeah.
It's funny because, I know you're buddies with Kevin Young, and that group, for those who don't know it, included particularly some pretty amazing poets who went on to become really heavy hitters.
Tracy K. Smith.
Right, Natasha Trethewey. And it's funny because when people talk about the Darkroom Collective, you get roped into that.
Yeah, somebody put it in an interview 10 years ago, and then I got on Wikipedia, and once it's on Wikipedia, you can never... I took it out one time, and I put it back like a year ago. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, one of my first jobs after college was working as an assistant for your literary agent, just as your first book was coming out, The Intuitionist. And I remember you doing an interview somewhere where you talked about how the main character, who's this elevator inspector, Lila Mae Watson, really came alive for you on the page. Although now I'm wondering if this is true. I think this is true because it wasn't on Wikipedia, but I heard you say it.
Sure, yeah.
That she came alive for you on the page when she like did this gesture you weren't expecting coming, which was that she accepts a bribe and like she puts like a $20 bill in her pocket when it's offered to her. Almost like she surprised you by doing that in a delightful way, because she's like, therefore, she's not entirely noble, and that makes her more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely I try to get, well, in some books, you know, some sort of gesture or moment that unlocks the character for me. Mm-hmm. And Lila Mae Watson and the Intuitionist, when they try to bribe her, and she's like, I'll take the 20, I'm not going to change my report.
Right.
But for me, I was like struggling, who is she? And then once I hit upon that sort of gesture, I sort of knew who she was. And there are different moments in different books where I figure out the person. I know what they're doing, I know what the themes are, but I don't know how they walk and talk, and then suddenly it'll click. With Cora in the Underground Railroad, it's when she stands up to the bully. And then, you know, then protects the kid from getting beaten. Two things that you don't expect from a young teenage girl, and then for me, sort of unlocked the kind of mystery for me.
Mm-hmm. I have a genre question for you. One thing that our provost was talking about, as well as Keelan was talking about, and even our dean too, is just the breadth of genre that your work represents. You're almost always reaching for the fantastical, though, in writing about Black experience. So the Intuitionist and the Underground Railroad can be described as speculative fiction. The first one, with a touch of noir, and John Henry Day's The Nickel Boys, more so historical. Colossus of New York is essays on New York. I don't think that one's been mentioned yet, but it's great. And you dabble in horror with the apocalyptic novel, the zombie novel Zone 1. And you've got the memoir, which I don't think has been mentioned yet, which is on high stakes poker, and that's The Noble Hustle. I just wanted to shout out my memoir students who are in the audience tonight and read an excerpt of that in anticipation of this evening. And now you're working on this Harlem trilogy that we'll talk more about since we're in Harlem. But my question for you is, why have you reached for different genres at different points in your growth as a person as well as in your career? Like, what does one genre do for you, say, that another can't?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, part of it is finding the right tool for the job. And with the kind of conversation I wanted to have about American history in the Underground Railroad, I couldn't have that with realism. And then the genesis of the idea was, you know, what if the Underground Railroad was a literal train? It's fantastic from its immediate conception. But then a novel like The Nickel Boys, I knew I wanted to be sort of tight and lean, and does it need to be fantastic gesture? Like, no. So finding the right tool for the job is important for me. And as someone who, as a writer, I was inspired to write by Stephen King and horror comics and TV and zombie movies. And so I got to college, I wanted to write like The Black Salem's Lot or The Black Shining. Like, if you took any Stephen King title and put the black in front of it, that's what I wanted. So I have a great love for all these, you know, like everybody, we all like different kinds of stories. Sometimes we like something serious, sometimes it's something lighter. And what I like about the job is that I can salute all these people who influenced me and inspired me when I was younger, and I can do something new. You know, if I can do a magic realistic historical fiction. Do I need to do it again? You know, luckily there's other kinds of stories I want to do. And, The Nickel Boys came to me with this crime trilogy. And so for me, it's a way of mixing it up, also saluting the kind of stories that inspired me. And if I'm not, I guess there's no one way of being a writer. So why not write a zombie novel? I like zombies. And how can I take from the tradition and make it my own? What do I reject? That's all really sort of interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the crime novels, the Harlem trilogy. It's an unfolding kaleidoscopic portrait of Harlem through this series of heists. And they occur at different pivotal points in history, in Harlem history. And they all involve this furniture salesman on 125th Street, Ray Carney, and he comes from a long line of hoods and crooks. In the first book, Harlem Shuffle, moves from 1959 to 1961. That came out a couple years ago. I think this is my favorite line. Robbing the Hotel Teresa was like taking a piss on the Statue of Liberty. It was like slipping Jackie Robinson and Mickey the night before the World Series. So the next book, Crook Manifesto, which you read from, came out this summer, and it starts in 1971 and moves through 1976. I imagine the third book will follow the same pattern and move us into the 80s.
Yeah, so far it's like 81, 83, and 86.
Okay. That's a heady time in New York. Can you tell us about how you've conducted Harlem research for these books and why you've chosen the historical moments that you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the decisions sort of accidental, you know, but then, you know, good things come out of them. I knew my first books were very contemporary, and I think I said what I wanted to say about how we live now, and so doing novels set in the past, historical novels, was really refreshing, and I think gave me new things to think about and new approaches. I couldn't rely on my sort of 21st century voice or whatever. And then I didn't want to do too much research, so it was going to take place, you know, after World War II. I was like, I can't go back to like the 1870s again. That's too much. So I thought when Harlem Shuffle was one story, I thought my themes would take advantage of some kind of big New York event. So like the blackout of '77, you know, they have a heist and they use that. But it seemed kind of obvious. And I was like, well, maybe the race riot of early 40s, anti-police riot, anti-police protest. But Ralph also used that Invisible Man, so I was like, I can't probably use that one. But unfortunately, you know, police brutality doesn't go away. And in 1964, before I was born, there was a week of rioting and protest after a young boy was killed by a policeman. So I thought that would be a moment that my thieves could use, but then I thought it was tacky to use that, and so it actually takes place the day after the riots are over, and in the aftermath, this in-between state where the city is sort of putting itself back together. And then I was enjoying Ray Carney, the main character, so much. I kept coming up with more capers, and so it'll be 3 capers and follow him over 5 years. And you don't think 5 years is a lot of time in a life, but he goes from being a very low-level fence to becoming a more practiced fence over 5 years. The city's changing. A child is born. His wife's job is changing. His wife is changing. So even though it's only 5 years, by having those 3 different sections, I could get actually a lot of momentum and dynamism in them. And then halfway through that book, I was like, I had more capers. So a second book, but then what's a trilogy? There's no such thing as a trilogy, so it should be a trilogy. So it's really sort of organic in the way it expanded.
When can we expect the third book?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I just handed in the first section to my agent like on Sunday. So like, thanks. Well, so I'm like, it's been 4 days, you haven't read it yet? So anyway, on my way up here, she's like, I'm on page 50, it's really good. So I was like, maybe we'll still finish it by the time I get home tonight. So I think I want to hand it in end of the year or early next year, and it'll come out, I guess, 2026. It seems like that's a good time.
Yeah. I think so. Oh man, I'm just thinking about the paper, like it's too bad the second one didn't have the takeover of City College, because those years have passed and now you're into the 80s, but I heard you telling one of our alumni, yeah, but this character isn't that political.
Yes, I mean, definitely in Europe, you know, European journalists are terrible, and they're like, how come, you know, Ray Carney's more political? And it's like, he's a crook, you know. Elizabeth, his wife, you know, has some smart things to say about what's happening that week. But it's not like it's like we're not going to the bank on Tuesday. No, I have to vote. That's election day. We can't not go to the bank on election day. They're not the most committed, politically. So, but also I can use the city's history, and so Robert Moses, plays a role in the end of Crook Manifesto and the fires in Harlem and the Bronx in the 70s, and the sort of mishaps of city planning. So, for me, like my crime stories are more inspired by movies than crime novels, and so I I saw Chinatown at a very impressionable age, and there's that moment when you think you know one kind of mystery, then you pull it back, and it's actually the history of Los Angeles and water and power and the real levers of how the city works. And so, definitely in Harlem Shuffle and Crook Manifesto, I am starting with street level crime and pulling back to get that sort of larger dynamic of the city. And for me, that's very fun.
For me too, because the city is constantly changing and in flux. And when we start the trilogy, if I'm remembering right, in Harlem Shuffle, he's like driving down to Radio Row, and already the city is changing. Like he looks up where the 9th Avenue L used to be, and he remembers it's like a ghost, a loup de memoire. When
he was a kid, the L was down there on the east side, and he goes down to Radio Row, which disappears a couple years later. It becomes the site of the World Trade Center. But in the 50s and 40s, it was this bustling, really hectic area where radio and TV hobbyists would congregate. And then, we know as modern readers what happens to that World Trade Center site. Radio Row will be demolished, someone will go in its place, and that will disappear, and there'll be a crater again, and someone will go in. So there is that, that dynamism I am trying to capture.
What was it like to win your second Pulitzer? Were you a little worried that folks would be like, this guy's hogging all the shine?
Well, it was, luckily, my standard depression creeped in pretty quickly, so all joy was wrung from it. It was the pandemic. It was like 2 months into the pandemic. It was May, and to treat, instead of me cooking, I've been cooking every day for like 2 months. We ordered sushi. And then the next day got back to work. I had like 30 pages to go of Harlem Shuffle. So obviously I didn't expect it because it was an unusual occurrence. And then what do? You appreciate that people got the book, and then you get back to work next time.
We have a question about that, getting back to work the next day, whether it's on the back of something great that's just happened, like winning your second Pulitzer, or just a more standard day where you're struggling with depression and doubt and all that. This is a question on behalf of my students, like how do you move through and get back to work the next day when, when it's hard?
No one's going to do it for you, so you have to do it. I wrote a novel before The Intuitionist, and I was like, it's going to get published because I wrote it. And then everyone hated it. And I think that's when I became a writer. As in junior high, I wanted to write horror novels. And then I worked at a newspaper, The Village Voice, and I became a writer, a freelancer. I wanted to write fiction. But I became a writer when, my first book, everyone hated it. And I was like, what else am I going to do? I can't. My parents wanted me to become a lawyer. I hate law. I'm going to become a vet. I hate animals. So I said I'd start another book, and then whether it's published or not, I'll be a better writer for having written 2 books. And then maybe the third one is when people will sort of understand it. Or the novel that everyone hated was the first person, it was very hipster-y. What if I had a female protagonist and did that? I haven't done that before. Maybe it won't get published, but I'll learn not to be in my head and have a character who's not me. And so I'll be a better writer for having done that. I'll be a third person because I've done a first person book. No one is going to do it for you, so you have to get off your ass and do it yourself. And it's when you write books, it's a paragraph a day, maybe 2 pages a day. 2 pages a day, I was like, woo, woohoo. Well, after someone from work, I'm like, I wrote 2 pages. He's like, it's great, honey. I mean, doesn't sound like a lot, but you seem very excited. You know? So you have to, find in the world's indifference your own failures as a human being and as an artist, that whatever it is going to get you to the paper the next day. So.
Thank you. We have time for some Q&A.
I guess there's some speakers, some microphones.
Are there some prepared questions?
We do have some prepared questions as well. No, we don't? No, we don't. No, but we are welcoming questions from the audience. So we do have 2 microphones on each side, and we have some individuals willing to help with the mic. So audience members, if you would like to ask both Colson and Emily some questions, feel free to come to the mics and ask some questions. We'd love to engage with you.
Or advice for me, I'm still,
Or Colson is willing to take some advice.
still searching.
Right here. One second. Let's wait for that mic. One more second for us.
Hello.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm an MFA student at City College, and I'm on a creative nonfiction track. And I was wondering, how do you get inspired or decide between writing like nonfiction, like The Colossus in New York, or The Noble Hustle, as opposed to like a fiction or novel? Like, why? How do you get inspired, or why do you make those choices? Like, this is a nonfiction.
Sure, yeah, choosing between fiction and nonfiction. I decided to identify as a fiction writer, but I had cool older sisters growing up, and my mom, always bought a lot of, New York Times bestsellers, and so we had Norman Mailer in the house. My sisters would read like Tom Wolfe and Joan Didion, and I would read their books. So creative nonfiction was always inspiration for me, in junior high and high school. So if I get I don't get a lot of cool nonfiction ideas. I guess if you don't like my nonfiction, then they're not cool. But if I don't get anything, things that inspire me, maybe once every 12 years. And with The Colossus of New York, it was 9/11. I was writing those sort of short, they're very short essays that are very impressionistic, and they were like a side project. I know what they were. And then after 9/11, I decided to commit to it full time and take these 4 or 5 vignettes and make them into 13. Because I wanted to figure out how to be in the city after this thing had happened to my hometown. And then with The Noble Hustle, which came out of a series of articles for a magazine called Grantland, they wanted me to cover the World Series of Poker, and I was like, no. And they're like, what if we instead of paying you, what if we paid your admission and you got to play in the World Series? And I was like, yes. But I know how to play tournament poker, so I would practice, and so I would drop my kid off at school, and the other parents would be like, where are you going, Colson? I'm like, I'm going to Atlantic City to gamble, and I would play tournaments all day, and take the bus back at midnight, and then after 3 months, I had to go to the World Series of Poker. So it was such an incredible experience, because I'm just a sad middle-aged man. I don't do anything new. So having to learn a new skill was great. There was the fear of failing in public, because if you're writing about going to World Series of Poker, you can't go out in the first hour. It's really embarrassing. So there's a lot of pressure. And then the culture is interesting, obviously. These weirdo gamblers. And then actually publishing it, because it was installments, so I would write it and then I get feedback on Twitter. I felt like I had people with me, and as opposed to me just being in my house, and someone reads my book 2 years later. So the whole thing was wonderful, and I decided to expand it and interview more gamblers. And so in both those cases, one, there's a horrible tragedy, and the other, a job opportunity that came my way that maybe inspired me to do nonfiction. So I'm about due. It's been like 12 years. You know, I don't want to like be in a plane crash and we have to eat other people to survive and come back to New York and write about it. But perhaps something nonfiction might come my way that I can write a book about. You never know.
All right, we have a question over here.
Hello. Hi. Two things. First, a piece of advice, since you're asking for advice. I think that you should definitely do merchandise or swag for Anhedonia, which I believe was your representation for the World Series of Poker. I think that would be, I would buy some, I'll tell you that right now. But my question for you is, with regard to the trilogy, did you find any special challenges or, I guess, maybe delights in working with a character for more than one book?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been delightful. I mean, now I'm writing, like, it's terrible, but having a character you want to hang out with for 3 books in a world, and, you know, I didn't think Pepper would, you know, get his own section, but his own novella, but he was so fun to write, I wanted to give him his own adventure. I haven't done a trilogy before, and I'm following someone when he's 29, and then when he's in his 40s, and then now he's in his 50s. And so that is interesting, like who's Carney in 59 versus 85? The city is changing as well, you know. The World's Fair, 64, a lot of optimism in the country, Camelot. And then in the 70s, the city's bankrupt, everything's going down the tubes, but in the 80s we come out again. And then in the space after where the book ends, you get the crack epidemic and AIDS crisis, you know, comes to a head. And so I'm tracking the city as well, these ups and downs. And then it just gets complicated because now in the 3rd book, each book has 3 stories, so Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And then the 3 books are Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And so the 3rd book has the burden or gift of wrapping up the themes of the first 2 books, so that's new. I'm figuring that out. If someone comes in, but we're not going to see him again or her again, I have to give him a proper send-off. And so there are different demands as the series winds down, and it's grueling, but also, you know, there are good days as well. But yeah, so it's a very new thing. I'm figuring it out, but then you have no choice but to figure it out. So.
Thank you for that question. We have one over here, and then we'll do those 2 back there. Lori? Right in the front. Right in the front.
So as Kidan mentioned, yes, these are the academic questions. Okay, because we're a bunch of academics. The enslavement of Africans and African Americans is an enduring theme in American literature, and I was wondering if what you think why that is, and what drew you to it.
I don't think you have to write about slavery or about American history, but definitely I do that sometimes, and it's part of my project. The same way that writing about New York is, you know, part of my project. Finding outlet for my weird humor is part of my project. So I always thought it was kind of inevitable. And I had the idea for the Underground Railroad in the year 2000, but I wasn't ready for it. So I waited till I was ready, and I would like pull out my notes when I finished the book. And it took me 14 years until I was actually, I think, confident enough as a writer to do it, mature enough as a person to write about slavery. So I don't know what other people do it. For me, it's, you know, some of our origin story. It's so much of how America came to be, and find my own way to talk about it. That's interesting. So, yeah, it was always there, and I think I knew I'd have to do it at some point.
Thank you for that question. So we have two up top here, and then we'll go right there.
Hi, so I read The Underground Railroad so far, and that's been like my foray into your work, but the topics you cover are obviously very difficult and cover a lot of brutality. So given the fact that you shared that you also struggle with depression, how do you as a writer work through such heavy material and still A, complete it, and B, maintain your own mental health?
Well, I usually do like a heavier book than a lighter book, and so I'm sort of alternating. So doing Underground Railroad and the Nickel Boys back to back was different and definitely draining. I think with the Underground Railroad, I did all my heavy lifting before I started writing, because it's one thing to have like this abstract idea, like, what if the Underground Railroad was a real train? Then you actually have to write about slavery, and you have to research slavery, and I think my existential reckoning before I started writing was that I shouldn't really be here. It's just a miracle that this or that ancestor somehow survived the Middle Passage, somehow survived this or that plantation, and they had a kid who survived. And so, even though it's a fantastic structure, I knew that I wanted the first section to be realistic, and so that meant dealing with the brutality, and it's not like I'm not going to do it like Gone with the Wind, where a white lady's being self-actualized against the backdrop of slavery, like, oh, they're going to burn my house down. Yeah, they should burn your fucking house down, you fucking slaver. You know, I'm not writing from that point of view. So I think I compartmentalized myself, or did all that stuff before I started writing, and then it was separate. With Nickel Boys, maybe because it stayed so close to real people's stories. By the end, definitely, I was very anxious. I couldn't go to the school that it was based on, because I would buy a ticket and get this real sort of heaviness and like miss my flight. And I realized that I couldn't go there. And then I had set these boys on this tragic route, 2 years before, and as I got closer to the end, the more, I was attached to them. I was telling, through these two fictional characters, the stories of real people who I felt I had to do their stories justice. And so I was bummed out in the last 2 months of writing Nickel Boys, and then I had my book in and just barbecued and drank wine and played video games. And that was my coping mechanism. I just vegged out for 2 months.
Thank you for that question.
Hi. Given the recent popularity of the film American Fiction, which is of course based on Percival Everett's novel, there's been a conversation about boxing in black writers and what it means to be a black writer and certain topics you can and can't write about and still be called a black writer. And given that your work, just as we discussed, transcends so many different genres, I was wondering if you've ever felt boxed in or penned in that way and how you feel about this new conversation.
No, I mean, my first book's about elevator inspectors, so no. But it's because people like Toni Morrison and Ishmael Reed, made it clear when I was in my late teens and college years that there's no one way of being a black writer, and it's dumb and reductive to think that there is. And so I never felt I do write about race and American history, but if I just wanted to be like a love poet or a nature poet, that'd be fine too. I don't have to be political or write about race because I'm black. Life is short, you should write what you want. And you certainly shouldn't worry about what people think you should be writing. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Write what is compelling to you. Whether it's a zombie novel, or a novel about enslaved people, or a divided soul in Harlem, So all those conversations I never paid attention to because I read mumbo jumbo, because I read Tar Baby, like, what's Tar Baby about? That's a crazy ass book. So I had a lot of models who worked it out for themselves, and I could look to them as an inspiration.
Thank you. Yes, he's coming. Thank you. We have two over that way. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you for the interview. I think when you talked about the character who didn't want to take off his shoes because he had these socks and he'd learned over time that they were a very comforting and private part of his life, it kind of resonated to me as a comment about how an artist learns the importance of their own art form, and they learn that through bitter experience. And they don't want to share their secrets or their vulnerability with others. And I for some reason, I just thought like him not taking off his shoes is kind of like an artist not wanting to write again or not wanting to express themselves again because they've learned over a long period of time that it's a vulnerable part of themselves. Was that at all part of that? And if it is, if it's really that discouraging to take off your shoes, why do you keep doing it?
Well, the one thing about literature is that everyone can have their own interpretation. For me, sometimes the books are autobiographical, sometimes they're not. I'm in different characters, I'm on different characters. I'm not at all in Cora in the Underground Railroad, which is why it's like my most successful book, I think. But perhaps you've heard of Never Nudes. I'm like a never nude socker. I always wear my socks. So in that case, my personal history, my autobiography has made its way secretly, but now in public, as you asked me, into my work. So my vulnerability, I felt this is a welcoming space. I felt okay to share it.
Why do you do you ever feel as if it's an effort to continue being vulnerable as a writer?
Well, I think for me, a big breakthrough for me as a person and as an artist was my book Sag Harbor. I felt my first couple of books were, pretty cerebral, dealt with various philosophical issues, and I felt in order to grow, I had to be more vulnerable. And so Sag Harbor is about growing up in the 80s, and it's more autobiographical than anything I'd done before then. I just was gonna let it all hang out, weirdo kid, alky dad, sister, dysfunctional. And I felt, as I was doing it, that it was really good for me to, in my late 30s, to sort of break on through and find a new way of talking about the world, a new way of being engaged with my work and being present in my work. I learned a lot about getting characters on the page. I think since Sag Harbor, my characters are more real because I sort of put myself out there in a way and figured out how to use my own personal history in an artistic way. I'm not sure if everyone has to do that, but it was good for me and very instructive, and I feel very good about that decision and that sort of moment of clarity that allowed me to change how I approach my work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. We have one more back there.
Yes, hi. What I wanted to ask you was, what's your balance in regard to the analytical approach to writing and your inner muse? How much of it, what's the balance? How much of it which one is used the most, or is there a 50-50?
I sort of get the question. I don't understand.
When people write, and I know a lot of times when I write, sometimes things just take me over. Something will happen. I wrote something, a stove was taken away, and it was the stove my grandmother cooked all our meals on. And when I realized that, I just had this gut-wrenching thing, and from it came 2 poems and a short story. And I didn't really do much.
Well, I think you want to be in it, but also you're creating something. You know, I think going back to the question about the Underground Railroad, if I was upset over American history, what happened to my family decades and centuries ago, I wouldn't be able to write. So you have to have some, at least for me, I have to have some sort of distance in order to have mastery over the material and find my way into characters. But also you want to be real. You want to be present also. So there is that mix between being in there and perhaps in a coded way, in pepper socks, but then also pull back so that I can have Corey's reaction, not be my reaction to what's happening to her, but her reaction as a teenage girl in 1850. And that's not me, and I didn't go through her experiences, so I have to step back and figure out how to make this person who's not real into something that's recognizable to readers and to me. So I think you're both sort of in and out. I'm not sure how else to describe it.
Well, thank you for those questions, and I know we have a few more out there, and guess what? There's a bookseller out in the lobby, and I bet if you buy a book and you ask Colson to sign it, and while he's signing it, if you ask really, really fast, he might talk to you. So buy a book. He has a bunch of them out there for sale, and we would love for you to support him and Emily, who has been our wonderful conversing with him today. Thank you so much for doing so. And guess what? She writes books too, and she has a new one getting ready to come out. So I hope that you will support her book as well. And I want to thank her when we were in conversation and trying to decide what quote from Colson's numerous books should we choose for our slide. She was the one who helped suggest this one. So thank you for that as well, Emily. Thank you. So now I would like to welcome up to the podium Michelle Valladares, Norval, and Lori. Would you come up? Thank you.
Ready? We are proud to acknowledge those individuals and organizations that are committed to improving our city and have enriched the community. And whereas February 1st, 2024 marks several special days at the City College of New York, the first day of Black History Month, the birthday of Langston Hughes, the reestablishment of Black Studies as a department at CCNY, and the college's Langston Hughes Festival. And whereas, founded in 1973 by the late Professor Raymond R. Patterson, the Langston Hughes Festival celebrates the prolific writer's vision of himself and encourages future African-American citizen poets, which Hughes defines as a human being who must live within his time, with and for his people, and within the boundaries of his country. And whereas the City College of New York's Langston Hughes Medal is given to distinguished authors throughout the African American diaspora who have written works that uphold the essence of Langston Hughes and his oeuvre, with awardees such as James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, August Wilson, Maya Angelou, Octavia Butler. And whereas 2024's City College of New York's Langston Hughes Medal is awarded to two-time Pulitzer Prize winner Colson Whitehead, who has demonstrated vast compositional prowess. There's more. Whereas Other awards Mr. Whitehead has earned for his incredible work include the National Book Award, the Carnegie Mellon Medal for Fiction, the Kirkus Prize, the Orwell Prize for Political Fiction, the Quality Paperback Book Club's New Voices Award, the Library of Congress Prize for American Fiction, and more. Now, therefore, Mark Levine does hereby commend Colson Whitehead for his contributions to the city and proclaim Thursday, February 1st, 2024, Colson Whitehead Appreciation Day. In the borough of Memphis.
My wife's out of town for Colson Whitehead Appreciation Day. She was surprised. Anyway, I lived in many places in New York, and I think I'm really blessed to have lived all over Manhattan and Brooklyn. When I was born, we lived a few blocks away on 139th in Riverside. And my first memory really is being with my brother and sister. And my brother and I would always crowd to the front of the one train when it came out of the tunnel, 122nd, 23rd Street. And we always rushed there. It was early 70s, so it was like totally filthy glass. We were so excited to see, our neighborhood sort of come into view. And I always get a weird chill when I come up here. My brother passed a couple years ago. My mom passed this winter. So to have that, brought back to that moment, that's so formative and important to me. Whenever I come up here, I feel just really, moved and part of the city. So thanks so much, for the festival for having me, and then for this lovely token, which I shall cherish.
Don't go anywhere. It's your day. And, I told you, it's Langston Hughes' birthday. It's the first day of Black History Month. Your wife's out of town, so, we got to throw something else on this day. Is Rich around? Where's Rich? Hey, Rich. So Rich is the president of the Langston Hughes Society, which publishes the Langston Hughes Review. Rich, you got something? What? It's his day. So, we should throw some more stuff at him, right? What you got? Let's see.
I don't have a very long speech prepared here, so you guys can get to the book signing. But I am the president of the Langston Hughes Society, and Langston Hughes, as we've heard throughout the day, was not only a poet, and most people know his poetry, of course, but he was an essayist, he was a short story writer, novel writer, playwright, and he was always, like Colson Whitehead, concerned very much with the social implications, the context that surrounded everyday people. People who are struggling. We can think of Carney, who's trying to go straight but can't quite go straight. And we can think of the people in Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes, termed in the Negro artists in the Racial Mountain, the low-down folk, right? The people who are, struggling just to get by. And that concern for everyday people, I think, is something we see in everything that Colson Whitehead writes, and it was also in everything that Langston Hughes wrote. So it is my honor, as president of the Langston Hughes Society, to present you with the President's Award for 2024.
Sure. Well, I mentioned about my friend Kevin Young, wonderful poet, now head of the African American Museum in D.C. And when I was writing my first book that that no one liked. I remember he was like a real poet. He would go to McDowell, Yaddo, these like writers' colonies. And when he would go, my colony was going to his apartment. Like, because I had nothing to apply to for these colonies. And so when he would go out of town, I would go to his apartment. So when I was writing my first novel, he was going to the MFA program at Brown, and he went to McDowell. So I stayed in his apartment, and I would like, work on my novel all day, and then read his books at night. And he had the Langston Hughes biography. And so, you know, one of my sort of core memories of me when I was finding my voice was scribbling and scribbling, and then reading like the 800-page Harlem Renaissance biography. I can't remember. It's not Harlem's, pardon me. And reading, you know, Langston Hughes's voyage as he found his voice, various tribulations in the 40s and 50s, being harassed by the government for socialist sympathies, and making a life for himself. And you know, I found his travails inspiring then, and I find them inspiring now. So, thanks so much. And it's going to go across my desk so I can look up and see Langston, you know, when I'm working in the press.
Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you so much, Colson, for inspiring all of us. We appreciate you so much. Well, we have come to the end of the night, but we, of course, have so many people we want to acknowledge and show appreciation for, because this does not just happen. It takes so many people to make it happen, and we want to acknowledge them. So I want to, of course, start by thanking CUNY and City and the Rifkin Center for all of their support to make this happen. I want to, of course, thank the Provost's office and the Dean of the Humanities for all of their support. Thank you all for making sure we could be here. I also want to thank the Modern Language Association and the College Language Association. Their support for my work has been instrumental, and I want to thank them for that. When we think about organizations and how they help us do what they do, I know students, you probably think about MLA style and are like, yeah! But they often are often helping support faculty members in the work that we do, and I want to remind us of that. The Black Studies Office and the Langston Hughes Committee. Langston Hughes Committee, if you're in here, wave your hand. Thank you so much for your work. We appreciate you. The Aaron Davis Hall staff, all of you who helped make this happen, from hanging all of these things, thank you so much for all of your work. And then I hope you look at this program. I want to acknowledge the designer, Kenneth Johnson, who did this, a faculty member, amazing design work, but in particular, I want to point you to pages 7 and 11. In particular, page 7, you have the scholarship fund for the paper. Of course, you can see it hanging around, but like I told you, it still exists. We have students who work at the paper. They need scholarship funds. Use your phones to scan that QR code. You can support them and donate. On page 11, you can donate to the Black Studies Scholarship Fund. And there's not a QR code for the Black Studies, just general fund, but find me and you can just hand me money and I will take it so that Black Studies can exist as a department. We will figure it out and work it out. So thank you for that. As I mentioned, there are books for sale out there. Please buy those books and support Colson and Emily and everybody. We want to sell books. There's also food out there. It's not for sale. You can just get it. Please get the food so we don't have to carry it back over anywhere. Please take it. It's individually wrapped, so you can take multiples. Please take it with you. That's why I had it individually wrapped, because I don't want to have to carry it back. All right? Take it with you. All right? Last but not least, Ariel, Emily, Colson, thank you all for entertaining, for enthralling, for everything that you did tonight. We appreciate you. And audience, thank you for showing up. Thank you on a Thursday night. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you next year. Have a great night.